Hi everyone, this is Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here with one of my friends and colleagues, Tim Wainwright, who is one of the founders of Security Risk Advisors, which you may also know as SRA. Tim, nice to see you.
Ed, same to you. Always good to see you.
It's great to see you as well. Hey Tim, we're going to get into some tech topics, talk about ransomware and other stuff, but just to get us started, maybe take a minute and share with folks what you guys do at SRA.
Yeah, happy to do that. For those who don't know us at SRA, we're a cybersecurity consultancy that's been around for about 11 years, and we're really known for our technical acumen. So we do a lot of red teams, we do a lot of blue teams, including 24/7 CyberSOC, and we're also increasingly becoming very well known for our approach to purple teams.
Must be pretty busy. This is seems like this is the time to be doing cybersecurity services.
Absolutely, and as we've grown, we really had to focus on our specialties and the things that we do distinctively. So we also do, get a lot of phone calls around cloud security and ransomware readiness and resiliency, which I think is one of the things that you wanted to delve into a little bit today, Ed, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just guessing, but I would imagine that ransomware must be one of the first things that people are asking you about. They certainly ask me. And we're not really in the business of doing ransomware mitigation. So I think it'd be a good idea for maybe you to give a little bit of advice here. So let's start with some of the basics. So first off, do you see this problem is this a new problem? Is this something that's popped up? Give us a little bit of perspective on ransomware.
Yeah, I got to talk to a group of executives recently, and I had to remind them that cybersecurity mattered before ransomware. And along with that, a lot of the mitigations and the preparedness that we can have around ransomware is with some of the same things that we should have been doing all along. And we need to use some of those controls, in some cases in a more specific way. But a lot of the answer to ransomware is not net new stuff. It's doing the basics well. And I'll give you a few examples and also some cautions. So, if you look at the conventional wisdom for ransomware to the extent that exists now, I want to warn that I see mixed good advice and not so good advice, even from authoritative sources. So good advice, and we've seen some good advice, even from the White House recently, on how to handle this. But also, in my opinion, some not as strong advice from the same establishment. So the White House has gone and said, we need to do MFA. Fantastic, you're absolutely right. But again, not new. We always needed this. Before ransomware, we need to do MFA everywhere. And what I like is they also named EDR, Endpoint Detection and Response, as an essential control. And most frameworks don't talk about specific tools like that. Things like CIS do, of course. But the more general frameworks, and certainly in a 2-page letter from the White House, it's surprising to see that. But they're absolutely right. Doing EDR well is a heavy lifter in doing ransomware prevention and preventing the things that happen afterwards, like lateral movement. On the other hand, I want to point out that one of the other things in the same letter is they talk about encryption. And I actually think that's kind of bad advice. I don't think you fight encryption with encryption. Because it's not going to work, first of all. For an organization large or small, they even said in the follow-up letter from Ann Neuberger that the idea is that if the data is stolen, it's unusable. I'm sorry, that's not a winnable fight, not for a Fortune 500 company, and probably not for a small one either. I would never have that in my top 5 of basics or even advanced things to go after. Do I think you should encrypt some of your data? Yes, that's a good idea, but certainly not for the sake of ransomware mitigations. It's the wrong path to go down. So I think it's interesting to see that even in a 5-point letter like that, number 3 on the list is already, well, I don't know about that. I don't think that's the best idea.
If you go back a bunch of years, AV didn't stop much, the signature-based stuff. And even when they got a little better, with behavioral algorithms, I still think it was a little weirder. Are you finding that good endpoint tools now actually have a chance of either detecting or preventing ransomware from encrypting files? Have you seen anything that you like?
They do. And one of the things that may surprise you, and those of us who've been security pros for a long time, we don't like this answer because we're conditioned against it. But I got to say, and one thing I need to say about SRA and Security Risk Advisors is we're not a reseller, so we don't resell anything. We're completely independent when we talk about stuff that works. But we've been very impressed with the amount of mileage you can get from Microsoft's own EDR that they continue to enhance. And some of the advanced settings like ASR, the attack surface reduction rules, are very effective. They're very effective right now, and the bad people will find ways to bypass things. But right now, it's hard to find something that does better blocking against behaviors and signatures. So that can be very effective. And again, that can be a hard pill for us to swallow, because we don't think that Microsoft should be good at security, because they kind of traditionally haven't been. But EDR is and well-configured EDR is a heavy lifter in this process. It's not the only thing you need. But one of the things that I want to stress as a gotcha, as a tip here, is installing an EDR, whether you get that one or one of the other leading ones, out of the box is not good enough. You need to go through the settings of these things, you need to tune them, and you need to test them. And that's where one of the newer emerging practices around ransomware resilience that not a lot of organizations are doing yet is do also an adversary emulation or a purple team. They're similar things. I get into the semantics of which they are. Do one of those things to actually verify that the collection of your protection, detection, and response tools are actually going to work if and when this type of ransomware enters your network. Some organizations are doing these types of threat emulations separately, but they're not all doing it in the context of ransomware and saying, let's actually simulate what these things are doing and make sure that everything's going to work in real time. And that's one of the things that kind of ties this back to purple teams, which again is one of my team's specialties.
Let's back you up. So you mentioned purple team. I'll bet a lot of people are familiar with red teams and blue teams and stuff. Give me a little tutorial on how a purple team works. I know that's something that you guys do with your clients. How would that work?
Yeah, happy to do it. And the best way to think about purple team is obviously it's a combination of red team and blue team. It's a collaborative exercise, and that's where the colors get mixed and it becomes purple. But the best way to think about a purple team is, in the simplest terms, and the geeks can get mad at me for this, but this is for people who haven't looked at this topic closely yet. It's an open book exam. So it's a pen test. It's a red team, but we're going to do an open book side by side with the blue team. There's going to be no blame, all collaboration. The red teamers are going to teach the blue team everything they know about the techniques that they're emulating. And the blue team is likewise going to teach the red teamers everything they know about their tools capabilities. And where there are gaps, again, no blame, no finger pointing, they work together to resolve and retest. And this is something that we should have been doing for a long, long time. And I'm one of these people who 15 years ago on the keyboard doing pen tests, I would finish my pen test, I would drop a report on someone's desk, I would walk through it very nicely because I was a nice and polite consultant. And the overall message, again, said nicely was, I got into your network, here's how, this is what you want to fix. By the way, you're bad at detection, good luck. And there's just so much less value from that point in time blind assessment and handing a report over the wall than there is doing it together and fixing the issues in real time. So you can see how that's a useful process just for a pen test or a red team, but it's an extremely useful process to get that type of real-time feedback doing a ransomware threat emulation.
It's a good way of thinking about it, because most of us view red, blue, purple team as being focused on stopping campaigns, like as opposed to like a piece of malware. But I think ransomware is a campaign, right? It doesn't seem like ransomware is just like this thing that happens. It looks like it's more of an operational thing. Is that kind of the idea of using purple team, that ransomware is just not this simple event that happens, it's this campaign? Am I thinking about that right?
You're absolutely right. A campaign is a series of actions. It's a series of operations. We can call them TTPs. We can call them test cases. We can call them red team operations. We can call them attacker actions. But the important thing about this is none of it is magic. And that was also one of the problems with pen testing in the old days is, that the pen testers would kind of guard their secrets about how they did this stuff. And that philosophy needs to be completely eradicated from the planet. We need to be very open book and clear about what we're doing. And the nice part about it, what ties all of this together, is most organizations are now trying to seek alignment, practical alignment with the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And the MITRE ATT&CK framework is not perfect, but it's a very good approximate universe of all the different attack patterns that could be conducted by malware, that could be conducted manually by a threat actor, by a red team operator. They're all operations, and all of these things that we could do as part of a malware simulation or an attack campaign, or whatever we want to call it, we can all map them back to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. One of the things that I'm really proud of is that SRA writes and maintains a free purple team attack emulation platform called Vector at vector.io. There's a lot of organizations using this platform right now to help them track this progress and show their MITRE alignment. And I'm also very proud that is actually being taught by several SANS instructors in high-level SANS classes. And those SANS instructors do not work at SRA. These are just industry professionals, some real heavy hitters who said, wow, here's a free tool that people should learn how to use.
That's really good. So the first couple elements here, one would be some sort of endpoint protection. The other would be a nice purple team analysis. Now, a lot of people, let me go down a different path here, talk about like backups and things like that is a pretty essential piece of it. What's your thought there? I know that keeping backups just makes a lot of sense for 1,000 reasons, to recover. But what advice do you have for people in terms of backing up data as part of a resilience campaign for anti-ransomware?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I have two pieces on that. One is read the manual on your backup platform. Unless you have a very old platform and haven't changed it forever, which is probably not the case. And even if you have, the backup vendors do not want your backups to be corrupted. They've created settings and instructions in the manual to tell you how to use the solution properly. Don't just plug the thing in, go through the manual and the checklist to see if you've done it correctly and securely. That's one. Two, test it. Restore testing. Never assume it works. It's the same problem as with purple teams where we say, hey, we bought an EDR, we put it in place, this is going to block malware, right? It might. Have you proven it? Have you tried it? Did you inspect what you expect? And the same thing goes for your backup controls. Did you actually inspect that it's going to correctly restore the way that you think it is?
So it is an important component. I totally agree. Like if you don't do it right, you're just going to reinfect yourself. So, so working with the vendor to make sure that that they've specifically designed for this case seems like a pretty good idea. Now the question I'm sure you get asked all the time, and I'm not even sure I know the answer, but it's around the ransomware payments. When you have clients, I'm sure they call you, neither you nor I are in the legal business, but when somebody says, hey, Tim, what do I do? What do you say? Like it's such a supercharged issue, whether you pay the Bitcoin or not. What are you seeing people do, and what advice do you usually have?
My first statement is, let me call you back from a secure line. Not necessarily. It's a really tough area because, we're hearing the FBI and law enforcement say it's illegal to pay ransoms, but they're also not the ones being ransomed. They're not the ones that have their manufacturing line locked up and losing $1 million a day as a result. So it's really difficult to answer, to have a direct answer for that. We do a lot of executive tabletop exercises, and one of the things that's interesting about these tabletop exercises is, and the way we conduct them is we do polling. We have the executives anonymously answer polls as we go through the TTX. Every time at the beginning of the simulation, every executive will 100% vote, no, we would not pay the ransom. But then as you go through the index and progress through the story, and as they have more discussions about it, that story starts to change by the end of the tabletop exercise, 90 minutes or even up to 2 hours later. And it's really interesting to see that evolve. I think that a considerable factor in this equation is whether or not cyber insurance is going to continue to pay. And already I've seen that the premiums and the deductibles on plan renews are getting absolutely astronomical. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have cybersecurity insurance, but the equation that I've seen for some of the organizations I've talked to recently about this is they're actually starting to decline. Because if the maximum of the payout is only going to be so much, and your deductible is half of that amount, and your premium is a quarter of that amount, you're starting to look at it and say, we're actually not getting that much benefit for this. Maybe we should take these millions of dollars and put them in a more focused way towards our preventative controls. And ransomware can be prevented if we do the right things and we practice, we do the right drills to make sure that our controls are going to work.
So there are not zero cases where you'd recommend like a children's hospital or something where maybe they should pay the darn fee and then take steps to prevent the next one. That's what I usually say. Again, I'm not a lawyer, and I always disavow and say, look, call your lawyer. I'm just giving you advice.
Yeah.
But I usually
I pretended to be a lawyer in many situations as a social engineer, and as a pretend lawyer. I'm with you. I think that in the situation you listed, when safety and health kind of trump everything. So I think those situations, I'm with you, cut and dry. I would never say don't pay. a ransom if it's a hospital, and that's what you need to save lives. I think the more nebulous areas when you're getting into consumer packaged goods companies whose line is frozen, or a pharmaceutical manufacturer who can't, who can't get the next dose out is another thing entirely that implies something else. But it depends on the criticality of the business. If it's a public health issue, I don't think that anyone's going to stand in the way or wag their finger after a payment. But this is a murky area, and I think we're kind of waiting to see what happens with, will anyone be taken action against? I don't think so. One of the things that we have seen, though, is the FBI and other organizations being quite helpful at helping in post-attack and even being able to recover some of these funds. And I think that that's a big win to say, hey, don't just pay them because the FBI will get it back for you, but they've actually gotten pretty good at helping with this stuff.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. A lot of companies might tell you that they're willing to pay, and then you ask them, do you have any idea how you pay? And it's crickets. So I think one thing that makes this kind of maybe bizarre advice, but if there was a scenario, a feasible scenario where you'd be paying the ransom, probably makes sense in advance to figure out how you actually would do that, how you execute. That seems like a hole in a lot of businesses' strategy. Have you seen some clients actually go through and do that and pay ransom, or has it been mostly you have? Yeah.
I have. And sorry, go ahead.
Do they have trouble doing it?
If they haven't been through it before, but what will often happen is, if they have a kind of a coaching firm, like a legal firm that specializes in data breach, they're able to coach them through the process and give them options. And one of the things that I was seeing a while ago is a lot of these coach firms kind of want to keep their, first of all, they don't like to be called that, but it's what they are. They want to keep their hands clean a bit, so they try to find another outfit, maybe even one like mine, to say, hey, can you guys be the broker for can you guys be the payment people for this? And it's like, yeah, no thanks. if that's our only seat at the table, no thanks. We want to do that. You guys have to find another way to do that, or coach the client through doing it themselves. But again, it's a murky area for how to do that. But if you think, the thing is, it doesn't take that long to spin something like that up either. So it's something that, you're probably not going to rush to pay this type of thing immediately, or, if you're planning to pay it, you wind up, getting in touch with the right people and talking through it and being able to buy some time. But yeah, you don't want to be, all this comes back to, you don't want to be in the situation, and doing the preparedness, following some of the government's guidance, but the right parts of the government's guidance, and really focusing on doing drills and making sure your controls work. That's the better answer. There's a lot of preventative work that can be done here. For Fortune 500 companies, this is the excuse to go back and do the difficult Active Directory security analysis to make sure that you actually have hardened Active Directory. And this is the thing that should have you going back and actually doing a good job with privilege access management. First, focusing on least privilege without tools, and then looking at a good PAM platform and putting good controls over these powerful accounts and administrator accounts, because that's how this stuff spreads. So that even if something gets into the environment, you've contained the blast radius and you can address it. That's a much better answer than getting into, should we pay or not pay ransoms? Avoid the situation in the first place.
Well, I sure do hope that some of the people watching give you a call. I'll give you a little commercial here. I know you guys know what you're doing in this area. This is for people who aren't sure. I sure do hope that they get in touch and get some assistance, because it's not really become a matter of whether this is going to happen. It's increasingly a matter of when, because you get these attacks that are hitting in an automated way a large number of customers and users. And you often get these guys who seem so confused. Say, why would somebody come after us? Not realizing that there's automation and it's going after everyone. So yeah. I do hope people go. What would be the best way for them to be in touch with your team, Tim?
Our website's a great way to get a hold of us. We're at SRA.io. You can find a contact form there. And we're actually really quick at getting in touch with people who want to talk to us. So yeah, if I can be of any help or talk through some of these other things, I kind of have a top 8 ransomware controls, and I call BS on a couple of others, so I can kind of help you steer away from things that are going to be difficult to implement and not necessarily solve the problem. So happy to have those discussions if anyone needs to.
That's great. And I guess if somebody's walking down Market Street in Philadelphia, they come knock on your door too.
Yeah, oh, we'll have to register you at the desk though. They won't let you in otherwise. Somebody actually came in with in order to work on some work tickets today, and they were wearing like an official polo shirt, and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna need a little bit more validation than that.
Wow.
Took them to the right person, but I'm not the guy who's gonna let that go by too. So
Don't ever go after a
this
security.
myself, so.
That's so funny. Well, Tim, listen, on behalf of my team at Tag Cyber and everybody watching, thanks so much for the advice, particularly people who aren't quite sure what to do about ransomware. I'm sure this will be very helpful for them. I hope they're in touch with you, and look forward to talking again soon, Tim.
Thanks, Ed. Enjoy the discussion. Always a pleasure.
It's great. And for everyone else, we'll see you all next time.